There's yet another entrant into the medium-sized SUV race with electric power. And once again, it's from China. This is the Deepal S07, the first model to arrive from Deepal in Australia, and there's only one variant available for now. Now, this car is priced just below a Tesla Model Y, which is the main competitor, really. And there are some things that are really good about this car and some things you need to be aware of where it's maybe a little bit below par. So let's get into the details. The Deepal S07 comes to Australia with only one trim level, and that is with a relatively high level of standard equipment. It's priced from $53,900 plus on-road costs, which makes it a little bit cheaper than the Tesla Model Y, the current model, I should say, which is on the brink of a price rise with a new model. Other electric SUVs at a similar price point include things like the Smart #3, the BYD C-Line 7, the Kia EV5, the Xpeng G6 and the Renault Megane E-Tech. Two options that undercut the S07 on price includes the Leapmotor C10 and the Geely EX5. This S07 comes with a single electric motor and rear-wheel drive with outputs of 160 kilowatts and 320 newton meters. That's not a huge number compared to some others out there, but it's also not too bad. What is big though is the battery. You've got an 80 kilowatt hour ternary lithium battery here, which is another way of saying nickel, manganese, cobalt in terms of the battery chemistry. Now that sits underneath the seats of the S07 to give a claimed driving range of 475 kilometers, according to WLTP testing. But when you consider our average consumption on our test was around that 16 kilowatt hour per 100 mark, that claim does seem to be fairly accurate. Now, Deepal claims a 35-minute charge from 30 to 80% of the battery, but it's worth pointing out that is only using 50% of the battery's overall capacity, and going from near zero up to full would more than double that 35-minute time. Standard equipment here includes a big fixed panoramic sunroof with an electric sunshade, 19-inch alloy wheels, dual zone climate control, a big 15.6-inch infotainment display, 14-speaker sound system, and of course you've got wired and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There's also a 360-degree camera system, powered tailgate, wireless charging pad and parking sensors front and rear. There's also electric adjustment, heating and ventilation for the front seats and position memory for the driver. And finally, the Deepal comes with a 7-year, 160,000 kilometer warranty. The battery comes with a separate 8-year and 240,000 kilometer warranty, but that is subject to some terms and conditions. Now, you might not recognize this badge because this brand is so new in Australia, but if you're in the market for an electric car, or any car for that matter, it's worth checking out Drive Marketplace and seeing what is in stock. So here's the interior of the S07, and as you can see, this is a very minimalized and I think stylized interior in terms of having as little buttons and as little features present as possible. In terms of build quality, this does feel pretty good actually. It's fairly solid. There's no rattles or creaks that I've come across while I've been driving this car for the last few days, but because there are no buttons around, a lot of what you have to do is actually through the infotainment display. So for example, you've got air vents here. They're kind of hidden within the design of the dash, but there's no controls. So how do you fix that? You actually have to go into the infotainment display and adjust things like fan speed, but also the direction of the air in here. Volume controls, once again, there's no volume dial. That is done via the steering wheel here or via the infotainment display. So it's actually not too bad. I'm a big fan personally of physical controls. At the risk of sounding like a bit of an old fuddy-duddy, I do like the way that that all works, but hey, this has a nice clean presentation and the operation isn't too bad once you're driving around and once you get to know where everything is in this infotainment display. Now, there's no digital instrument cluster here in front. You do have a head-up display, however, in this car, and you do have a small speedo readout, your gears and that sort of thing up in the top of the infotainment here. So even though it is quite minimalized, it's not too bad overall. Now, in terms of practicality, we do have two cup holders here, a big storage area in the front here. There's a wireless charging pad on one side and then just space on the other side for maybe your keys or your wallet, whatever it might be, and a fairly big center storage bin here. So that's going to fit a fair amount of stuff. And then on top of that, you've got a small area down here below, and that's got a USB-A and USB-C power outlet there. So from a practicality point of view, it works well. Ergonomically, it's not too bad. I would say this seat is perhaps a little bit short in terms of the length of the cushion down here below. I'm not getting a heap of under thigh support as a driver. There's a decent amount of adjustment here on offer, I think, but ergonomically it doesn't feel as bang on as other cars that I've driven recently. It's a small complaint, I think, but one nonetheless. So overall, this interior, it's clean, it's simplified. Operation isn't too bad overall, but in terms of practicality and storage, it does work quite well. Now, I've got to say, I am a sucker for a pillarless door, and we've got that all around in this decal. Adds a bit of style, I think. But more importantly, let's talk about space in the second row of this car. Now, first thing to notice is that this door doesn't open super wide in terms of giving you access into the second row. Jumping in and out is not too bad, but if you're lobbing in babies into baby seats and that sort of thing, it's maybe a little bit tighter than other cars. But in terms of space, once you're in there, it is good. Now, a good test, as always, is a rearward-facing baby seat. I've got ours installed in there at the moment. There's heaps of space for someone up front, but still plenty of room for a baby seat in the back. Now, let's whip that out and see what it looks like with me in the back. All right, the baby seat is out and I am in. And first thing to talk about, as always, is the amount of space on offer. Now, that's my driving position up front. I'm around 1.8 meters tall, and as you can see, bucket loads of legroom is on offer here. A bit of footroom as well, that's all really good. And even though I've got a sunroof, which I have opened at the moment, there's pretty good headroom also. Maybe a really tall person might start to rub their head on the roof a little bit, but it's not too bad, I think. And this sunroof, well, it's huge. It doesn't actually open, but it does let a lot of natural light in. I do like it, although it might make this car a little bit hotter on those hot summer days. But in terms of seat comfort and position, this is really good. Now, one small detail I did notice in this car is the door to window ratio is relatively high here. So you've got a lot of door and not a lot of glass. So visibility from the back here isn't fantastic, especially if you've got a smaller person or a kid in the back. And it's also hampered a little bit by this big sporty styled seat in front. You've got a big old headrest on the top there. You can't see much of what's going out the front there. And from the side, well, it's not amazing either, but seating position and comfort is good, I think. So you do have some air conditioning controls here, but it's worth pointing out that this is not a 3-zone air conditioning or climate control setup. This setup here is actually tacked off the second zone in the front, so the zone for the front passenger. So if I adjust the temperature up and down, or the fan speed up and down for that matter, it's actually adjusting it up front as well. So I can see in the future a couple of ding-dong battles happening here with adults and kids alike. If someone in the back's cold, someone in the front is hot, and they start to really adjust things between each other. So one little detail to keep note there. We've got a pretty good setup here. I don't mind it. The materials look and feel nice, and you do have a really big pop-down armrest here with cup holders and a bit of storage there. That all looks pretty good, I think. So this is a winner in terms of space, but probably not for visibility. Now, in terms of boot space, we've got 445 litres in the back of this S07. Now, of course, naturally, you can drop that second row down for even more space, but I think this is pretty good. The load height is reasonably low, and it is a flat loading area to get your things in and out relatively easy. There's a couple of lights in there and a couple of tie-down points, but not much more going on beyond that. And as is often the case with electric cars, we don't have a spare wheel here hiding under the floor. There is an inflation kit there, so that's something to be aware of, because if you do get a flat, you'll be depending on that or possibly a tow truck. Overall, this decal is mostly a nice car to drive. In terms of the ride quality, the way it steers, of course, there's a lot of refinement being an electric car. It's very quiet and all of that sort of thing. You do notice on rougher surfaces and lower speeds on things like speed bumps, you do get a bit of stiffness through the suspension. Listen to that. Still going. That is the driver monitoring system. So there's a camera in front of me here on the steering column, and granted, I am turning and looking to you a little bit while I'm driving along here, but in my testing with this car, I'm going to talk about it now because it did interrupt me just then. The driver monitoring system is unlivable in its current form. Now, we understand that Deepal is working on a fix to this, and they can do an over-the-air update to fix it. But in my testing with this car, I've been driving it around the suburbs. I've also been doing a fair bit of highway driving and sort of rural, regional back roads. It's abominable. It's really hard to live with it and actually get any of the benefits from it, because it's just constantly going off, telling you to concentrate on the road. And when you put sunglasses on, which many of us do, obviously, it gets even worse. This car also has traffic sign recognition, which does have false positives from time to time. It will read the wrong signs and then start binging at you and bonging at you for going over the speed limit when you're actually not. And there's also a lane departure warning system that also needs work. That can vibrate the steering wheel quite a lot. That's more at higher speeds though. Around town, it's not too bad, but on the highway, it does seem to think you're veering off the lane when you're definitely not. So those are all things that need work. The best thing to do in the meantime is just to turn them off, and you can do it. You go into here, and to save me getting interrupted, I'm going to turn off distraction warning. Oh, there it goes again. Turn it off, turn off the speeding alert and the lane departure assist. It's not too hard to turn off, but you do have to do it every time. But anyway, where was I? The ride quality. So I'm just coming up to a speed bump here at the moment, and you do feel a bit of stiffness in the ride when you're going over some things like that. It's not too bad, and it's being a little bit picky, I think, but it does show the weight of the car, I think, and just a little bit of a lack of suppleness at times. But for the most part, this car does ride and steer pretty well. It's up there, I think, pretty close with some of the better vehicles in the segment in that regard. Now, in terms of outright punch, this Deepal is a little bit behind the game in that regard. Most other electric cars, be that front wheel drive or rear wheel drive, do offer more straight line performance than this has. And it does feel pretty perky actually from a standing start, because you've got that instant torque of an electric motor. So that gets you moving, but you'll notice it a little bit more when you're going uphill or trying to do an overtake on the highway, something like that. This car does start to feel a little bit less potent than most other electric cars, because a lot of electric cars these days actually are quite fast. This is just a little bit behind the pace in that regard. The other thing to note as well is visibility. So visibility through the windows, the rear view mirrors is fine, but through that back window, it's actually not very good. So you do need to really depend upon your side mirrors, I've noticed, driving this car, and the 360-degree camera as well through this display here, which thankfully is a very good system. But otherwise, this Deepal is mostly a pretty easy point and shoot affair around town, provided that you turn a lot of those monitoring systems off. You do have a couple of different driving modes to choose from, and a couple of different regenerative modes to tailor, I suppose, the driving to your own tastes. But for the most part, this is good and solid, I think. Well, it's an impressive first hit out from Deepal in terms of the quality of this product overall, especially considering how new this brand is, both in Australia and on the global scale. But the million-dollar question, is this better than a Tesla Model Y? Is it a better choice? I don't think I'll go that far to say, even though this is a good car. There are a couple of things holding it back. Firstly, it hasn't got the same kind of grunt that you get elsewhere with electric cars, and it is also lacking in terms of the charging speeds that you can do. 92 kilowatts, it just precludes this thing from being as suitable for someone who wants to do a bit of a road trip and use that growing public charging network around Australia. But it rides and steers well enough, the interior is good, and the second row space is fantastic. So it's definitely worth consideration. All right, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and let us know what you think about this Deepal S07 in the comments below. And of course, for the full story on this car and any other new car on the Aussie market, head to drive.com.au. Now, the best-selling electric car in this segment is, of course, the Tesla Model Y. And to see a review on that car, I've got a video for you right here.